The humid air of the Sepang International Circuit hung heavy, thick with the scent of high-octane fuel and the palpable anxiety of a fallen giant. For years, the Iwata factory had clung to a philosophy that the world had outgrown. But as the garage doors slid open for the 2026 shakedown, the familiar high-pitched scream of the Inline-Four was gone. In its place was a guttural, violent throb that shook the very foundations of the paddock. Yamaha had finally built a V4. But a monster is only as dangerous as the man who commands it. No one inside the paddock expected what would unfold next, and it would change everything for the team, the rider, and the trajectory of the entire 2026 season. For over 2 decades, Yamaha's identity was forged in the smooth DNA of the crossplane Inline-Four. It was the bike of surgical precision, the machine that allowed legends to dance through corners with effortless grace. But in the modern era of MotoGP, grace had become a liability. Against the brutal horsepower and sophisticated aerodynamics of the European manufacturers, Yamaha had become a ghost on the straights. The decision to abandon their heritage and develop an entirely new V4 engine wasn't just a technical pivot. It was an admission of defeat. The weight of this failure rested heavily on the shoulders of the engineers in Iwata. They weren't just building a new engine, they were attempting to rewrite the laws of their own physics. The objective was clear but seemingly impossible: deliver staggering top speed without sacrificing the corner entry stability that was once their only weapon. According to insiders, the early bench tests of the V4 had been plagued by reliability issues and a power delivery so aggressive it threatened to tear the rear tire to shreds within 5 laps. The project was teetering on the edge of a technical abyss. Yet, the real turning point happened away from the cameras, in the choice of the man who would tame this new beast. While the paddock was preoccupied with the mechanical turmoil at Yamaha, a different kind of storm was brewing in the form of Toprak Razgatlioglu. A WorldSBK champion, a man who treated a motorcycle not as a vehicle, but as an extension of his own defiant will. For years, the Turkish sensation had been dismissed by MotoGP purists. They claimed his aggressive, front-end heavy riding style, defined by those iconic vertical stoppies, would never translate to the rigid, unforgiving chassis of a prototype. They said he was too old, too different, too stubborn to adapt. But behind that calm expression as he walked into the Yamaha garage for the first time, pressure was building fast. Toprak wasn't there to fill a seat, he was there to fulfill a prophecy. He arrived at Sepang with a reputation for being an outlier, a rider who could find grip where none existed. Yamaha Motor Racing Managing Director Jarvis knew that if the V4 was a gamble, Toprak was the only hand worth playing. But as the mechanics began to warm up the prototype, a chilling realization swept through the garage. This wasn't just a test of a bike. It was a test of whether a human being could actually survive the raw, unrefined power of Yamaha's new era. The 2026 prototype sat under the harsh fluorescent lights of the Sepang garage, a matte black enigma of carbon fiber and secret internal developments. This shakedown was the most critical moment in Yamaha's recent history. Beyond the V4 engine, the bike was outfitted with experimental aero packages designed to combat the wheelie tendency of the new, more powerful motor. Paddock whispers suggested that the electronics department was working overtime, trying to map a traction control system that didn't feel robotic to a rider as tactile as Toprak. The technical tension was suffocating. Every time Toprak exited the pits, the engineers watched the telemetry screens with bated breath. They were looking for the power character, the delicate balance where the V4 could scream down the long Sepang straights at over 350 km/h while still allowing for the precision braking Toprak demanded. Initial reports from the telemetry room were concerning. The bike was fast, staggeringly fast, but it was fighting the rider. It was a mechanical confrontation, a dispute between a chassis that wanted to remain stable and an engine that wanted to break free. However, what the paddock discovered next shocked even the most seasoned observers. In the high-pressure world of MotoGP management, Jarvis is known for his stoicism. He has seen champions rise and fall, but even he couldn't hide his reaction as Toprak completed his first full-attack run. Typically, a rider transitioning to a new engine architecture requires days, if not weeks, to find the limit. Toprak didn't wait. From the moment he exited the pits, he was bold on his braking points, meticulously maintaining a racing line that defied the bike's current setup. Internally, Jarvis was said to be truly surprised by the lack of an adaptation phase. Toprak wasn't just riding the bike, he was dominating it. He was entering corners at extreme angles that the Yamaha engineers thought were mathematically impossible for the current chassis configuration. Rival teams, including the dominant Ducati squad, began to congregate near the fences, peering into the Yamaha garage with furrowed brows. They weren't just looking at lap times. They were looking at a rider who was rewriting the data sheets in real time. Yet, this was only the beginning of a far bigger storm, as the physical reality of the Sepang heat began to expose the cracks in the new project. As the sun beat down on the Malaysian tarmac, the temperature rose to a grueling 40 degrees Celsius. In these conditions, the V4 engine became a furnace. The cooling systems designed for the cooler air of a laboratory began to struggle. Rumors emerged of a heated confrontation behind closed doors between the cooling specialists and the aero designers. The experimental components were reaching their thermal limits, and the bike's performance began to dip. Toprak, despite his legendary fitness, was feeling the strain. The V4 required a different level of physical exertion compared to anything he had ridden before. Every corner was a battle of attrition. There was a moment in the afternoon session where the bike appeared to hiccup on the exit of turn 15, a miscommunication between the new electronics and the gearbox. For a few agonizing seconds, the project looked like it might collapse under its own complexity. The dream of a triumphant return felt like it was slipping away, replaced by the grim reality of a manufacturer that had perhaps bitten off more than it could chew. But what happened after that left even his closest team members stunned. Just when the engineers were prepared to dial back the power to save the engine, Toprak did something that defied the technical briefing. He asked for more aggressive engine braking. He realized that the V4's weakness wasn't its power, but how that power was managed during the transition from high speed to corner entry. While the rest of the grid relied on sophisticated aero wings to push the bike into the ground, Toprak used his own body and the front tire to create a mechanical pivot. The twist was clinical. By changing his approach to the stop phase, he was able to mask the engine's unrefined power delivery. He wasn't just faster, he was more consistent on used tires than the factory regulars. He provided feedback so detailed, explaining the minute vibrations in the front fork under maximum load, that it allowed the crew to make setup changes that usually take months in just a few hours. He was no longer just a test rider, he had become the lead architect of the bike's soul. The realization hit the paddock like a lightning bolt. Yamaha hadn't just built a bike for a rider, they had found a rider who could bridge the gap where the engineering fell short. As the final checkered flag of the shakedown fell, the atmosphere in the Yamaha garage had shifted from cautious optimism to a quiet, dangerous confidence. The message from Sepang was clear. The 2026 season was no longer a foregone conclusion. Yamaha had delivered a bike with more power, sharper acceleration, and a top speed that finally put them in the hunt. But more importantly, they had unlocked the winning mentality that Toprak brought with him from the world of production racing. The results of this shakedown will inform major technical decisions for the rest of the year, but the psychological damage to their rivals is already done. Toprak Razgatlioglu isn't here to learn slowly. He is here to dismantle the status quo. Jarvis sees this as the ultimate signal of Yamaha's revival, a return to the forefront of MotoGP. But as the teams pack up and head to the next official test, one question remains. Can the rest of the grid handle a V4 Yamaha in the hands of a man who has nothing to lose? This was just the first step, and the storm is only getting started.